So, recently I've been doing some bounty prep for Witch Queen, and I needed to do Altars of Sorrow. I remembered that I completed my Graviton Lance Catalyst in Altars and pulled it out of my collections to enjoy the chain explosions once again. But this time something was different. I was feeling something I hadn't felt the first time. The void explosions from Graviton were still fun to watch, but I was beginning to realize that I had barely scratched the surface of what this gun could make possible. What I'm going to show you today is essentially a juiced up version of an old and faithful combination of exotics, those being Graviton Lance and the Warlock Helmet Nezarec Sin. Just those two alone are already an excellent combination, as Graviton Lance's chain explosions activate Nezarec Sin, which will increase the regeneration rate of both your abilities and your super. But we also have some mods on our armor making this even better. Starting with our class item, we have two bomber mods to get us some grenade back whenever we put a rift down. And we also have the mod Elemental Ordnance, which will spawn an elemental well matching our subclass when we get a grenade kill. On our helmet we're running Ashes to Assets so that grenade kills will produce a little more super energy than they normally would, as well as Well of Potency, an artifact mod this season that allows elemental wells we pick up to give us some super energy back. Now I've also put on Elemental Charge to get charged with light whenever we pick up a well, and Energy Converter so that we can use our charged with light to give us more super energy upon throwing a grenade, at least until reaching 50% super. Finally, on my arms, I'm using Grenade Kickstart to grant back some of our grenade after using it. So the goal of this setup is to essentially take advantage of Nezarec Sin to increase our super and ability regen, and boost our grenade regen like crazy, then use grenades to get us more super energy. And the effects were definitely noticeable, as any time I encountered a group of enemies, I was able to get some kills with my grenade to spawn an elemental well, then get some grenade and super energy back from picking up the well, as well as charged with light, so the next time I had a grenade up, it would use my charged with light to give me some super back on top of doing everything else. Now the funny thing about Nezarec Sin is that it works on all subclasses, not just Voidwalker. However, I did mainly utilize bottom tree Voidwalker in the mod Elemental Armaments so that Graviton Lance could also produce elemental wells that would match my subclass, so that Well of Potency would take effect. The other benefit of Voidwalker is that your Void abilities and even your super will activate Nezarec, which provides some excellent synergy. Additionally, because I was using Devour, while I had Devour active, any kills I got were giving me grenade energy, which helped give me a lot of grenade uptime. But for the sake of this video, I did go ahead and try to make a Stasis Setup with this build, and I'll admit, I was impressed with the results. After making a few changes armor-wise, I was still finding myself with the super extremely often. First off, I switched to a Stasis Bond so I could use two utility kickstart mods as well as the mod Well of Restoration, which increases the amount of ability energy elemental wells grant to whatever ability has the least energy. Additionally, I switched out elemental armaments for the mod Elemental Shards, which allows stasis elemental shards to count as wells for me so I could use the shards to get charged with light. Now the reason I made these changes is because without Devour feeding me grenade energy, I wasn't getting grenades as often, and I was having a hard time getting stasis duskfield grenades to give me elemental wells, which brings me to my aspects and fragments. So I'm using Ice Flare Bolts to chain freezes, and Glacial Harvest so that I can get Stasis Shards to substitute as elemental wells. Now for my fragments, I've got Whisper of Durance so that enemies will stay slowed longer to make getting shards a little easier, and Rhyme for the health bonus from shards. The two big ones though are Torment to help me get some grenade energy back every time I take damage, which is pretty often, and Whisper of Bonds, which grants super energy from defeating frozen enemies. So with the Stasis setup, the goal is pretty similar in that we're trying to get our grenade up as much as we can to feed into our super. But the elemental shards counting as wells helps a ton, as we can spawn those with both our grenade and our melee ability, both of which can proc Ice Flare Bolts to chain freezes. Now Graviton Lance will still proc Nezarec Sin with Stasis on, but because it's not spawning those void elemental wells anymore, or benefiting our grenade cooldown from Devour, it doesn't synergize quite as well. So I actually pulled out a 7th Seraph sidearm I have with Demolitionist in the hopes that it would work better, and it definitely helped a ton. I think pretty much any void weapon with Demolitionist would help here, or any weapon with Demolitionist period. But again, our goal is to get Nezarec Sin to give us ability energy, and since we're using a Stasis subclass, we need to use void weapons to get it going. The other nice thing about using the sidearm here over Graviton is that our exotic slot is freed, so if you wanted to rock Gallarhorn or some other exotic heavy, you can do that now. And to be honest, Graviton in this build is more for the fun factor than practicality, but come on, you gotta admit watching the chain explosions is pretty neat, right? Like I said though, I probably haven't fully explored the potential of this build. In an ideal world, I think I'd max out my discipline to make the most of it, and if a void primary weapon that can roll Demolitionist and Thrash ever comes out, that will truly take this build to the next level. I do also see some potential with this build in higher level content, as you could use something like Le Monarch to proc Nezarec, which would be excellent for whenever bows have a champion mod through the seasonal artifact. That's about all I have for this build though, guys. Definitely try it out if you can. It's super fun, especially if you're willing to give Graviton Lance a go. Thanks for watching and have a great one.